Aqui está a tradução e adaptação da história para o inglês americano, com todas as modificações culturais, de nomes e locais solicitadas para se adequar ao cenário dos Estados Unidos. The conference room on the 45th floor of Home Towers and Vance offered a view of the Manhattan skyline, but no one dared to look out the window. All eyes were fixed on the 38-year-old woman pacing the room like a stalking predator. Victoria Vance didn't need to raise her voice to dominate a room. Her presence was enough. The quarterly report projected on the screen showed numbers in red. To her, red meant blood in the water, and she was the shark. Her finger tapped on the glass table, making a sound that echoed like a judge's gavel. The 16 executives around the table sank into their Italian leather chairs. Some avoided her gaze. Others tried to look confident, but the sweat on their foreheads gave them away. Frank Cole, the CFO who had been with the company for 15 years, swallowed hard as Victoria approached him. He held a Mont Blanc pen as if it were a shield. Victoria stopped beside him and leaned in slightly, her grey eyes piercing his. Do you want to explain to me how a company billing $2 billion a year manages to have a 12% drop in operating margin in just 3 months, Frank? Her voice was low, controlled, dangerous. Frank opened his mouth, but the words jumbled before they could come out. He looked at his colleagues, seeking support that no one would offer. The market situation has been challenging, he began, but Victoria was already cutting the air with her hand. Challenging, she repeated, every syllable loaded with disdain. Do you know what's challenging, Frank? Having to explain, to the board of directors, why I keep a team that can't deliver basic results. Do you know what else is challenging? Waking up every day knowing I have to carry this company on my back while you... She swept the room with her gaze, as if assessing the worth of every person present. While you pretend to work. The silence that followed was deafening. Anna Phillips. The Director of Human Resources swallowed hard and tried to intervene. Victoria, perhaps we could discuss the recovery strategies that... Strategies? Victoria turned to her so fast that Anna recoiled in her chair. You want to discuss strategies? I give you strategies every day. I map out routes, set goals, define processes. And do you know what you do? You waste my time with excuses and incompetence. The discreet sound of a door opening at the back of the room made some executives turn their heads. A middle-aged man entered pushing a janitorial cart. He wore the dark blue uniform of the maintenance staff and kept his eyes down, trying to be as invisible as possible. Robert Bob Miller had learned over the last 3 years that invisibility was a virtue in that building. The less the important people noticed his presence, the better. He began to discreetly empty the trash cans around the room, his movements precise and silent. Victoria continued her monologue, now directed at Gary Mendez, the COO. You promised me the new production line would be operational in January. It is March, Gary. 3 months late. 3 months of losses. Gary, a 50-year-old man who looked like he had aged a decade that morning, tried to explain. There were issues with the overseas suppliers and... There are always issues, Victoria interrupted, but never solutions. Do you know what the real problem with this company is? You. All of you. Sitting in these expensive chairs with your Ivy League degrees and your 6-figure salaries, and you can't deliver the basics. That was when she noticed Robert. He was crouched beside the table, changing the liner of one of the trash cans. Her movement toward him was so sudden, it made him look up by instinct. For a brief second, their gazes met. Robert saw something in her eyes that he recognized. It wasn't just anger. It was something deeper, darker. It was pain disguised as power. But he lowered his eyes quickly and continued his work. Even you, Victoria said, and the tone of her voice made Robert freeze. Even you, who are here just to clean up other people's trash, managed to be more useful than half this table. Robert felt every gaze in the room turn toward him. He kept his head down, finishing tying the trash bag. Victoria approached him. What is your name? Robert, ma'am, he answered quietly, still not looking at her. Robert, she repeated. Robert, can you do your job, Robert? Can you empty a trash can without needing a strategic alignment meeting? Some executives let out nervous chuckles, relieved not to be the target anymore. Robert nodded in silence, grabbing the trash bag and preparing to leave. "Wait!" Victoria's voice stopped him. She crossed her arms, observing him with cruel interest. "Since you're here, why don't you give us a demonstration of efficiency? Show these people what it's like to do your job without excuses." The awkwardness in the room was palpable. Anna Phillips tried again. "Victoria, this isn't..." "Isn't what?" Victoria cut her off. "Fair? Efficient? I want him to show us what it's like to work with dignity. What it's like to do what you're paid to do without complaining about market challenges or supplier problems." Robert took a deep breath. He could just leave. He should leave. But something in the way she spoke, as if she were testing not just him, but herself, made him stay. "Excuse me, Mom," he said, his voice surprisingly firm. "I do my job because I need to, but with all due respect, humiliating people won't make this company grow." The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. It was the silence of absolute shock. Victoria blinked as if she had been slapped. No one, absolutely no one, spoke to her that way. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice dangerously low. Robert finally raised his eyes and looked directly at her. "I said that humiliating people won't make this company grow. I see you every day breaking these people. They are afraid of you, and people who are afraid don't work better. They just learn to hide their mistakes." Victoria took a step forward, but Robert didn't back down. "Are you telling me how to run my company?" "No, ma'am," Robert replied, his voice calm but determined. "I'm saying you look like someone who has forgotten that people aren't numbers on a spreadsheet. They are human beings, with families, problems, dreams. And you, with your broom and your cart, think you know more than I do." Victoria was now inches from him. "I know what it's like to lose everything," Robert said, and his voice carried a weight that made Victoria hesitate. "I know what it's like to wake up every day with a hole in your chest and still choose not to pass that pain on to others. You have power here. You could use it to build, but you choose to destroy." Victoria's face turned red. "You're fired." Robert nodded slowly, as if he expected that. "That's fine," he said. "But before I go, let me say one thing. You can fire me. You can continue tearing this team apart. But at the end of the day, when you go home alone to that empty penthouse, you'll realize that all the money and power in the world don't fill the void you carry inside." He grabbed his cart and started heading for the door. "Get out of here before I call security," Victoria said, but her voice was trembling. Robert stopped at the door and turned one last time. "Real strength isn't destroying people, Mum. It's having the courage to lift them up when they fall. My wife taught me that. She used to say that kindness is a choice we make every day, even when the world gives us 1,000 reasons to be cruel." And then he left, leaving a silence so deep everyone could hear their own heartbeats. Victoria stood in the same spot, her hands shaking slightly. She looked at the executives around the table. "Meeting adjourned," she said abruptly, and left the room before anyone could see the tears threatening to fall. When the door closed behind her, something extraordinary happened. Julian Sands. A junior analyst who had been silent the whole time started clapping, slowly at first, then with more force. One by one, the other executives joined in. Soon the whole room was applauding, some with tears in their eyes. Casey Rhodes, from the IT team, grabbed her laptop. She knew the security cameras recorded every meeting. She had system access, and she had just witnessed something that needed to be seen. In less than 10 minutes, the video was on her phone. In 20 minutes, it was in the employees' WhatsApp group. In an hour, someone had shared it on a private social network of former employees. And at 5 in the afternoon that day, when Victoria Vance finally picked up her phone after hours locked in her office, she saw that her life was about to change forever. The video had leaked, and it was spreading like wildfire. The video was 3 minutes and 42 seconds long, time enough to destroy a reputation built over 2 decades. Victoria watched it for the 10th time, sitting on the white leather sofa of her penthouse in the Tribeca, Koso. The iPad screen showed numbers growing by the second: 500,000 views, 600,000, 800,000. The comments were an avalanche of indignation. This is what's wrong with late-stage capitalism. This woman is everything wrong with the corporate world. That employee is a hero. Does anyone know his name? Victoria felt bile rise in her throat. She, who always controlled every aspect of her public image, was now the symbol of corporate cruelty. The face everyone loved to hate. The phone rang. She looked at the screen. Henry Travers, chairman of the board. She let it go to voicemail. She wasn't ready for that conversation. 2 floors below ground level in the 1-bedroom apartment he shared with his daughter in Orsay, Queens, Robert Miller was turning off the TV. The news had just aired a segment about the video. They hadn't shown his face, just the part where he confronted Victoria, but his voice was there, clear and firm. "Dad, are you okay?" Bella appeared in the bedroom doorway. At 10 years old, she had her mother's attentive eyes and the constant worry of someone who had grown up too fast. "I am, honey," Robert replied, opening his arms. Bella ran to him and nestled in his lap. "Just a tough day at work." "Did you lose your job again?" The question was simple, but carried the weight of 3 years of instability. Robert kissed the top of her head. "I did. But we'll be okay. We always are, right?" Bella nodded, but Robert saw the worry in her eyes. She was little, but she wasn't foolish. She knew that every firing meant nights where her dad stayed up late, doing math, looking for new jobs. What he didn't tell her was that every firing was a stab to his pride. Robert Miller had been someone. An aeronautical engineer, graduated from the Air Force Academy, worked at Lockheed Martin for 12 years. He designed planes. He had a promising career, a brilliant future. He even worked in international cooperation with the USAF on developing navigation systems for military aircraft. Then came the crash. No, he corrected himself mentally. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice. A choice he made that changed everything. 4 years ago, during a prototype test flight, there was a critical failure in the systems. Robert was the lead engineer. He saw the problem, knew it should have been detected earlier. The aircraft crashed in an uninhabited area. No one was seriously injured, but the investigation was brutal. They didn't find criminal negligence, but they found errors. Errors in judgment. Errors that cost millions and stained his reputation. Robert was fired, blacklisted in the industry. His name became synonymous with failure in circles that once respected him. And then, when he needed support the most, his wife, Julia, did something he never expected. She left him. "I can't do this anymore," she had said, tears streaming down her face. "I can't live with someone who gave up fighting. You were a warrior, Robert, and now you're just a shadow of the man I loved." She took Bella and left. For months, Robert sank into depression, stopped looking for work, stopped leaving the house, stopped living. It was Bella who saved him. She was 6 years old when she appeared at the door of the apartment where he lived alone. She had a small backpack and a teddy bear. "Mommy is sick," she had said with a trembling voice. "The doctor said she needs to go to a special place." She said, "I should stay with you." Robert found out later that Julia had been diagnosed with a serious mental health condition, deep depression, self-destructive tendencies. She was in treatment at a specialized facility. Contact with Bella would be limited until she stabilized. Suddenly, Robert wasn't just a broken man. He was a single dad, and his daughter needed him. He got up, literally and figuratively, took the first job he found, in maintenance at a commercial building. The salary was a tenth of what he earned before. The work was physical, exhausting, but the hours were flexible. He could pick Bella up from school. He could be present. And then he made a choice, the same choice he made every day. He chose not to let bitterness win. He chose to be kind, even when the world had been cruel, because Bella was watching, and he wasn't going to teach his daughter that life could break you irreparably. Over the next 3 years, Robert worked 5 different maintenance jobs. Some he lost due to budget cuts, others because he refused to accept disrespectful treatment, and the last one at Towers and Vance because he decided defending his dignity was worth more than the paycheck. Now sitting with Bella on his lap, he wondered if he had made the right choice. They had savings for 3 months, maybe 4 if they cut expenses. Bella needed a new school uniform. The rent was going up in 2 months. But when she looked at him with those trusting eyes full of unconditional love, Robert knew, yes, he had made the right choice. He would always make the right choice when it meant teaching her that some things are priceless. Meanwhile, in Victoria's penthouse, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Text messages flooded her screen. Friends, or people she thought were friends, sending the video with evasive comments. Her publicist called 5 times, her lawyer 7. Finally, she answered Henry Travers' call. His voice was cold, professional. "Victoria, we need to talk. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., boardroom." It wasn't a request, it was an order. That night, while the city slept, 2 people stayed awake. Victoria, sitting on the floor of her living room, surrounded by trophies of achievements that now seemed empty. And Robert, in bed next to Bella, staring at the ceiling and wondering how he would pay next month's bills. Neither knew their lives were about to intertwine in ways that would transform not just them, but hundreds of other people. By the next day, the video had reached 5 million views. The newspaper headlines were relentless. Billionaire CEO humiliates employee and is confronted in viral video. Ice Queen melted by humble janitor. Man fired after defending dignity becomes symbol of resistance. The press quickly discovered Robert's identity. It wasn't hard. Towers and Vance employees were talking. Former colleagues from Lockheed recognized his voice. Within 24 hours, his story was on every news portal. Aeronautical engineer working in maintenance confronts CEO. From plane designer to janitor, the fallen resilience of Robert Miller. Single dad loses job after defending human values. Robert woke up to dozens of messages from journalists wanting interviews. Job offers started coming in. A GoFundMe was created by strangers to help him. In 2 days, it raised $40,000. He was moved and embarrassed at the same time. He didn't want charity, but when he thought of Bella, of being able to guarantee her future, he swallowed his pride and accepted. Victoria, on the other hand, was facing a different kind of hell. The meeting with the board was brutal. 6 men and 3 women sitting around the table, looking at her like she was a bomb about to explode. "Your numbers have always been impeccable," Henry began. "But numbers aren't everything. The company's image is destroyed. Stock is down 17% in 2 days. Clients are reconsidering contracts. Investors are nervous." Victoria sat upright, trying to maintain composure. "This will pass. Scandals always pass." "Not this one." Lucy Moore, one of the board members, intervened. "You don't understand. This touched a nerve. People are tired of tyrannical CEOs. You've become the symbol of everything wrong with the corporate world." "And what do you want me to do?" Victoria asked, her voice carrying a defiance she no longer felt. "We want you to take a leave of absence," Henry said. 3 months, unpaid. Use this time to think, to reflect. And when you come back, if you come back, we need to see real change. Victoria felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. "You're pushing me out." "We're saving you from yourself," Lucy said, and there was something almost gentle in her voice. "Victoria, you built an empire, but you built it on foundations of fear and intimidation, and those foundations are cracking." Victoria left that meeting shattered. For the first time in 20 years, she had nowhere to go, nothing to do. Her purpose, her identity, was in the company, and now they had taken it from her. While she drove aimlessly through the streets of Manhattan, Robert was at Bella's school talking to the principal. "We have an opening for a custodian," Principal Beatrice offered. "Flexible hours, close to your home. And Bella can stay here after school at no cost." It was the answer to his prayers. Robert accepted on the spot. That night, father and daughter celebrated with pizza. Bella was beaming. "Now you work at my school, Dad. I'll see you every day." Robert smiled, but inside, a part of him still ached. He had designed airplanes. Now he cleaned school bathrooms. But when Bella took his hand and said, "You're the best dad in the world," he realized something. Importance isn't in what you do. It's in who you are to the people who love you. It was a lesson Victoria still needed to learn. and fate, in mysterious ways, was about to give her an unexpected teacher. Victoria's penthouse was 4,000 square feet with 6 bedrooms, but she always slept in the same one because the others were too empty to bear. That morning she woke up without the usual 5:30 a.m. alarm. No meetings to lead, no urgent emails to answer. For the first time in 20 years, she had nowhere to go. The feeling was terrifying. Victoria made coffee, sat on the couch, and picked up the remote. The news channels were still talking about her. A morning show had a debate on toxic leadership in the corporate environment. She was the prime example. Corporate psychologist, a guest on the show, analyzed her behavior. What we see in the video is a classic pattern of leadership by fear. These people have often been deeply wounded and built defense mechanisms based on absolute control and emotional detachment. Victoria turned off the TV. She didn't need a TV psychologist to tell her what she already knew deep down, but acknowledging it was different from accepting it. She walked to her home office, a room with mahogany shelves filled with business books and trophies. On the wall, diplomas and certificates, Harvard Business School, Executive of the Year, Award, magazine covers featuring her as the country's youngest billionaire CEO, and in the corner, on a discreet shelf, a framed photograph, the only personal photo in the entire apartment. Victoria picked up the frame and sat in the leather armchair. The photo was 22 years old. It showed a 16-year-old girl next to a tall man in an impeccable military uniform. Commander Julian Vance, USAF fighter pilot, her father. Her eyes stung. She hadn't cried in years. She had decided tears were a weakness. But alone, without an audience, without masks, she felt the first tear roll down. Victoria's story began with him. Julian Vance was a hero. Decorated, respected, feared, and loved equally. He flew supersonic jets and led squadrons with the perfect combination of discipline and care. "Take care of your crew," he always told her as a child. "A true leader isn't the one who flies the highest. It's the one who ensures everyone comes home." Victoria idolized her father. She wanted to be like him. Strong, decisive, admired. She studied harder than her peers, got perfect grades, got into the best university, did everything to hear him say, "I'm proud of you." And then, when she was 16, everything fell apart. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice, a terrible choice Julian Vance had to make during a rescue mission. A civilian aircraft had technical problems over the ocean. Julian was sent to escort it. But there was a communication error, a navigation error, and he had to choose. Save the civilian aircraft or save himself. He chose the civilian aircraft, ejected from the jet seconds before collision. The civilian aircraft landed safely. He survived, but with severe injuries. But the investigation that followed was relentless. Error in judgment, they said. Recklessness. He lost. His flight status was demoted, publicly humiliated. The hero became an example of incompetence overnight. Julian Vance never recovered, not physically, as his wounds healed, but emotionally, he was shattered. He started drinking, stared for hours at the sky where he could no longer fly. His marriage to Victoria's mother fell apart. He was permanently discharged from the Air Force, and then, on a cold day in July, he simply disappeared. Victoria was 17 when she came home and found a letter, written by hand in the firm handwriting she knew so well. "My dear Victoria, you have always been my greatest pride, but I can no longer be the father you deserve. Not like this, not as a broken man. I need to go away, find a way to live with what happened. Don't look for me. Keep flying high for both of us. Love you always, Dad." It was 7 years of silence. 7 years in which Victoria threw herself into her studies, then work, building empires while trying to fill the void he left. She became ruthless because she decided she would never be broken like he was. She would never let a mistake or weakness define her. When Julian finally reappeared, Victoria was 24 and already a regional director for a multinational. She was in a meeting when she got the call. Her father was in Washington, D.C., sober for 3 years, working as a civilian flight instructor. He wanted to see her. Victoria went, but she went armed with resentment and anger. The man she found wasn't the imposing commander of her childhood. He was someone older, with white hair, deep wrinkles. But there was something different in his eyes. Peace, perhaps. He tried to explain, talk about depression, about the weight of guilt, about how he needed to distance himself so he wouldn't drag the family into his abyss. Victoria listened in silence and then said the words she would carry for the rest of her life. "You chose to run, and you taught me that strength means never showing weakness. Thank you for the lesson." She left and didn't look back. Cut off contact, blocked numbers, returned letters unopened. Her father tried for years, but she was relentless, and eventually he stopped trying. Now, holding that old photo, Victoria wondered how many times she had replicated the mistake she criticized so much in him. How many people had she broken because she was afraid of being broken first? The phone rang. It was her mother. Helen. Victoria hesitated before answering. The relationship with her mother was cordial but distant. Monthly lunches filled with empty conversations about nothing important. "Hello, Mom. Victoria, I saw the news. I'm worried." "You don't need to be. I'm handling it." There was a pause. Then Helen said something that surprised Victoria. "Your father called me yesterday. He saw the video too." Victoria's heart raced. "I don't want to talk about him. He just wanted you to know something." Helen took a deep breath. "He said he saw the pain in your eyes, said he recognized it because it's the same pain he carried, and that if you continue on this path, you'll end up exactly like he did, alone and consumed by regret." Victoria closed her eyes. "Is that all?" "No. He said he still keeps the keychain you gave him on your 10th birthday, the one with the silver wings. Said he looks at it every day and remembers that his daughter once believed he could fly." The call ended shortly after. Victoria sat in her office, for hours, staring at the photo. She had built an empire, yes, but on what foundation? Fear, anger, toxic perfectionism. And now, everything was crumbling. In the following days, Victoria did something she hadn't done in years. Nothing. Absolutely nothing productive. She woke up late, walked around the empty penthouse, ate poorly, watched TV without paying attention, tried to read and abandoned the book after 2 pages. One afternoon, she found an old notebook in a drawer. It was from when she was 15. She opened it to a random page and saw her own teenage handwriting. "Today, Dad took me to see the Jets. He said real leaders don't lead by fear, but by example. He said people follow those who make them feel safe, not those who make them feel afraid. I want to be like him when I grow up." The words seemed to come from someone else, from a Victoria she had left behind decades ago. She grabbed her laptop and did something she had avoided. She searched for Robert Miller, found articles about his past at Lockheed, about the crash that ended his career, read interviews where he talked about raising his daughter alone, about choosing kindness even when he had every reason to be bitter. There was a recent interview given to a small local paper. The reporter asked how he didn't become resentful after everything he lost. Robert's answer was simple. "Resentment is a prison where you are the only prisoner. I choose freedom." Victoria closed the laptop and walked to the window. The city stretched out infinitely, lights blinking in the falling night. So many people down there, each with their struggles, their pains, their dreams. And she, at the top of her ivory tower, had been so busy building walls that she forgot to build bridges. She thought about Robert, about how he had the courage to speak the truth knowing it would cost him his job. She thought about his dignity, the way he refused to bow even when everything was against him. And she thought about herself, the ruthless CEO she became, the woman her father wouldn't recognize, the leader who commanded by fear, not example. For the first time in 20 years, Victoria Vance made a decision not based on strategy or calculation. She made a decision based on something she had buried so deep she almost forgot. It existed. Conscience. She picked up the phone and called her personal assistant. "Sophie, I need an address. Robert Miller, the employee from the video. I want to know where he lives, where he works now." There was a surprised pause. "Of course, Miss Vance. May I ask what for?" Victoria looked at her father's photo again, at the man in uniform who once taught her about true leadership. "I need to apologize, and I need to learn something I forgot a long time ago." "What would that be, ma'am?" "How to be human again." Public School 118 was in a working-class neighborhood in Queens with tree-lined streets and older houses. Victoria parked her silver Mercedes in front of the gate and sat for 10 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, heart pounding. She had rehearsed what she would say, mentally rewrote the speech 12 times, but now sitting there, everything seemed inadequate. How do you apologize for destroying someone's dignity in front of an entire room? How do you compensate for humiliation with words? It was 4 in the afternoon on a Thursday. Kids were leaving school in noisy groups, backpacks on, laughter echoing. Victoria saw parents waiting at the gates, hugging their children, asking about their day. It was a completely alien world to her. Her childhood had been expensive boarding schools and professional nannies. She got out of the car, adjusted her Chanel blazer, and walked to the front office. A lady in her 60s, grey hair in a bun, smiled kindly. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Robert Miller. Does he work here?" The lady narrowed her eyes, assessing Victoria from head to toe. The expensive suit, the designer shoes, the bearing of someone used to being in charge. "Are you a reporter?" "No, I'm—" Victoria hesitated. "Someone who needs to speak with him. He's in the back courtyard fixing the water fountain. But let me tell you right now, if you came to cause trouble, you'll have to get through me first." There was protective ferocity in the woman's voice. Victoria realized Robert had allies here, people who cared about him, something she no longer had in her own company. "I didn't come to cause trouble. I came to apologize." The lady's expression softened. "Oh, you're her, the CEO." Victoria nodded, feeling her cheeks burn. The lady sighed. "Well, at least you had the courage to show up. Through the gate to the left, cross the yard. He's there." The courtyard was an open area with some trees, rusted swings, and a makeshift soccer field. Robert was crouched beside an old water fountain, toolbox open next to him. He was wearing jeans and a blue work shirt. His hands were greasy. Victoria stopped a few yards away, uncertain. Robert, sensing her presence, turned around. When he saw her, surprise crossed his face. He stood up slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "Ms. Vance," he said, his voice neutral but cautious. "Mr. Miller?" she replied, and then realized how overly formal it sounded. "Please call me Victoria." They stood in silence for a moment, assessing each other. It was strange seeing him there, in his element. No longer the invisible employee cleaning a conference room, but a man on his own turf, confident and present. "Can I speak with you?" Victoria finally asked. "Just a few minutes." Robert looked at the fountain, then at her. "Sure. Let's go over there, under that oak tree." They walked in silence to an old oak tree. Robert sat on a worn wooden bench and Victoria, after hesitating, sat next to him, keeping a respectful distance. She opened her purse and took out a small object wrapped in tissue paper. "You left this in the conference room that day. I thought I should return it." Robert unfolded the paper and smiled sadly. It was a small keychain with silver wings, an Air Force emblem. "I thought I lost it." "Why do you carry that?" Robert held the keychain, looking at it like it was a portal to the past. "My mother-in-law gave me this when I got into the engineering program. She had been an air traffic controller in the Air Force. Said these wings represented not just flight but freedom, the freedom to choose who you want to be." Victoria felt a lump in her throat. "My father was in the Air Force too, fighter pilot." Robert looked at her, surprised. "Really?" "Was," she corrected gently, though it wasn't entirely true. "He was discharged many years ago, a mistake during a mission. They broke him, and he disappeared. I haven't spoken to him in 14 years. "I'm sorry," Robert said, and there was genuine sincerity in his voice. "You don't need to be. I'm the one who should be apologizing." Victoria took a deep breath. That's why I'm here to say I'm sorry, truly sorry, for what I did to you that day, for the humiliation, for the cruelty. There is no justification for my behavior." Robert remained silent, turning the keychain in his fingers. "Why did you do that? Treat people that way?" Victoria looked at the sky. "Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I let my guard down, if I showed weakness, I would be destroyed like my father was. So I built armor, a ruthless CEO persona, but I forgot that underneath the armor there was a person, and that person got lost." She turned to him, tears in her eyes. "You were right about everything you said. I was destroying those people because I was destroyed inside. And seeing you there, with your dignity intact, even after everything you lost, showed me how small I had become despite all my power." Robert nodded slowly. "You know what hurts the most in all this? It's not what you said about me. It's... Do you remember what I answered?" "Every word. I said my wife taught me about kindness." He laughed humorlessly. "The truth is more complicated. My wife left me 4 years ago because I had become bitter, angry at the world after my career imploded. She said she couldn't live with someone who had given up fighting anymore." Victoria looked at him in surprise. "But you said..." "I lied, or rather, I oversimplified." Robert sighed. "After she left, I fell into a deep depression, stopped functioning. And then my daughter appeared at my door. She was 6. My ex-wife was in psychiatric treatment, couldn't take care of her. And suddenly I had to be a dad, I had to get up." He looked at his own hands. "It wasn't a magic transformation. It was a choice I had to make every day. Wake up and decide to be kind, even when I wanted to scream. Smile, even when I wanted to cry. Because my daughter was watching me. And I wasn't going to teach her that the world breaks you irreparably." "That is real strength," Victoria said softly. "Much more than anything I've ever done." "It's not a competition." Robert looked at her. "You're not the villain the media painted. You're a wounded person who learned the wrong survival mechanisms. The question is, what are you going to do now?" "I don't know," Victoria admitted. "For the first time in my life, I really don't know. They pushed me out of the company. My reputation is destroyed. I don't have real friends. My family is distant. I built an empire but forgot to build a life." "Then start now." Robert handed the keychain back to her. "Keep this. Let it remind you that you can choose to fly differently." Victoria took the object, her hands trembling. "But how? How do you change when you've already caused so much damage?" "Start small. One person at a time, one choice at a time." Robert stood up. "Look, I have to pick up my daughter now, but I can tell you what my mother-in-law used to say. The person you were yesterday doesn't have to be the person you are today, and the person you are today doesn't have to be the person you'll be tomorrow." "Can I come here again to talk?" Victoria asked, also standing up. "I need to learn, and you seem to be a good teacher." Robert hesitated, then nodded. "On Thursdays I work late. Bella has science club. You can come. But be warned, this place doesn't have air conditioning and the coffee in the teacher's lounge is terrible." Victoria smiled, the first time in weeks. "I survived Harvard Business School. I think I can handle bad coffee." In the following weeks, something extraordinary happened. Every Thursday, Victoria went to the school. Sometimes they talked about leadership, regret, second chances. Other times, she simply helped him with small repairs, learning to use tools, getting her expensive clothes dirty. One afternoon, while painting a peeling wall in the library, Robert asked, "Have you ever thought about doing something besides apologizing?" "Like what?" "Like changing the system that allows CEOs like you used to be to exist." Robert dipped the paint roller. "Create something that helps people like me. Families hanging by a thread." Victoria stopped painting. "Go on. How many people work in your company with sick kids, with relatives needing care, with financial problems keeping them up at night? If you really want to change, start by creating a system that supports these people, not out of charity, but because it's the right thing to do." The idea planted a seed. In the following nights, Victoria began sketching plans, a foundation, not just for her company, but open to employees everywhere. Scholarships, psychological support, emergency aid, everything she would have wanted her father to have when he was falling apart. On a rainy Thursday in July, Victoria arrived at the school with a folder. "Robert, I need to show you something." They sat in the empty library as she opened the documents. "It's a foundation, 50 million of my personal money, support for employees' families, education, mental health emergencies. But it needs someone to run it, someone who understands what these people go through." Robert leafed through the documents, impressed. "This is incredible, Victoria, truly." "I want it to be you," she said directly. "To run the foundation, fair salary, complete autonomy. You know the pain. You know the struggles. You are the right person." Robert looked at her for a long moment. "Are you sure? People will talk. They'll say it's a marketing stunt." "Let them talk," Victoria replied. "I'm not doing this for image. I'm doing it because I learned from you that there are things more important than reputation, like impacting real lives." Robert extended his hand. "Then I accept, but on one condition. We do this together. You don't just sign checks, you participate, meet the families, get involved." Victoria shook his hand. "Deal." 3 months later, Victoria was back at Towers and Vance, but not as the CEO who had left. The board had accepted her return with a series of conditions: closer supervision, quarterly organizational climate evaluations, and mandatory participation in humanized leadership programs. She accepted all of them without hesitation. The return meeting was scheduled for a Monday morning. Victoria arrived an hour early and walked the empty halls. Every room, every desk held memories of her tyranny. There she had humiliated the intern who spilled coffee. In that room she had made a manager cry for missing a deadline. In the elevator she had ignored employee greetings dozens of times. She went up to the 45th floor and entered the conference room where it all began. The chairs were arranged perfectly. The table shined, but Victoria saw ghosts there, saw Robert with his cart, saw her own reflection that day, cruel and empty. "Ms. Vance," a soft voice brought her back. It was Casey Rhodes from IT, the same one who had leaked the video. She was at the door, uncertain. "Casey," Victoria turned. "Thank you for coming early." Casey entered slowly, clearly nervous. I'm not sure if I should be here. After what I did." "You did the right thing," Victoria interrupted gently. "I needed to be stopped. And you had the courage to do what no one else did, thank you." Casey's eyes widened. "You're not angry?" "I should be, but I'm not." Victoria gestured to a chair. "Sit, please. I need to tell you something." They sat, and Victoria told her about the last 3 months, the conversations with Robert, the foundation, the decision to change not just her leadership, but the entire system. Casey listened in silence, processing. When Victoria finished, Casey wiped a tear. "I leaked the video because I couldn't stand seeing people suffer anymore. But I never imagined it would change so much, that it would change you." "It changed everything," Victoria admitted. "And now I need your help, and everyone's help, because I can't do this alone." At 9 o'clock, the room was full. Every employee who could be present was there. 150 people packed into the conference room, in the doorways, in the hallway. There were skeptical faces, curious ones, hopeful ones. Victoria stepped onto the small makeshift stage. Her heart was beating fast, but she kept her voice steady. "Good morning. I know many of you didn't expect to see me here again. Some probably hoped I wouldn't come back, and I would understand completely." The silence was absolute. "I want to start by apologizing. Not a corporate apology, full of empty words. A real apology. I was a terrible leader. I created an environment of fear where people were terrified to make mistakes, where hiding problems was safer than reporting them, where working here meant sacrificing your daily dignity." She saw some nodding. Others had tears in their eyes. "You deserve better. This company deserves better. And I will spend every remaining day of my career trying to be worthy of your trust." Victoria took a deep breath. "So let's get to concrete changes. First, I am creating the Wings of Hope Foundation. $50 million initial funding with continuous annual contributions. This foundation will offer support to any employee and their families, scholarships, free psychological support, emergency aid for financial or health crises. A murmur of surprise ran through the room. Second, we are changing our evaluation policy. No more public humiliations, no more blame culture. Mistakes are learning opportunities, not reasons for terror. Third, I am creating an organizational wellness committee, elected by you, with real power to bring issues directly to the board. Frank Cole, the CFO who had been humiliated in the video, raised his hand. Victoria, with all due respect, how do we know this isn't just theater? That at the first crisis you won't go back to who you were? The question was fair, legitimate. Victoria looked at him. You don't. No one knows. All I can do is show, day after day, that I've changed. But if you or anyone here feels I'm slipping back into old habits, I want you to confront me. In front of everyone, if necessary. She paused. And to direct the foundation, I am bringing in someone many of you know, at least from the video. Robert Miller, if you could come up here. The back doors opened and Robert entered, wearing a simple but dignified suit. The room exploded in applause. People stood up. Some shouted words of support. Robert, clearly uncomfortable with the attention, walked to the stage. Victoria smiled at him and then turned to the audience. Robert will lead the foundation because he understands better than anyone what it means to be at the bottom and have to fight. He will ensure this isn't just marketing, but real change. In the following weeks, the transformation began to take shape. The foundation opened an office in the building itself. Robert hired a small but dedicated team. Applications for aid began to arrive. Victoria, true to her word, got involved personally. Every Friday, she dedicated the afternoon to visiting families supported by the foundation. She learned stories, heard pain, and learned. On one of those visits, she met Lisa, a telemarketer for the company, mother of 3. Her youngest had autism and needed expensive therapies. My husband drives Uber 16 hours a day, Lisa said, tears streaming. I work 2 shifts, and it's still not enough. Victoria held her hand. The foundation will cover the therapies, and let's see what else we can do. You shouldn't have to choose between caring for your son and paying the bills. Weeks later, Lisa came to Robert's office with a handwritten letter for Victoria. It simply said, "Thank you for seeing my son as a person, not a cost." Victoria kept that letter on her desk. When she doubted herself, when old habits threatened to return, she read those words. Change was also happening inside the company. Anna Phillips, the HR director, led a complete overhaul of the organizational culture. Workshops on respectful communication, empathetic leadership training, safe spaces for feedback. But not everything was easy. There was resistance. Some old-school executives thought the new approach was weakness. 2 resigned, saying the company was going soft. Victoria let them go without trying to convince them to stay. Real change, she learned, required some people to leave. Not everyone wanted to evolve. One day, Gary Mendez, the COO, came to Victoria's office visibly upset. "We have a serious problem. The new production line is finally operational, but we found a design flaw. Fixing it will cost $2 million and delay deliveries by 6 weeks. Victoria's old impulse was to scream, blame, terrorize. She felt the anger rise, familiar and tempting. But then she looked at Lisa's letter on her desk, took a deep breath. "Thank you for telling me, Gary. I know it wasn't easy to bring bad news. Let's gather the technical team and find the best solution. And afterwards, let's implement better testing protocols to prevent this in the future." Gary looked at her, clearly surprised. "That's it?" "That's it," Victoria confirmed. "Mistakes happen. The important thing is how we respond to them." When Gary left, Victoria realized she was shaking, not from anger but relief. She had passed the test. She had chosen differently. That night she called Robert. "I had my first real crisis today, and I didn't yell at anyone." Robert laughed on the other end of the line. "And how did it feel?" "Strangely liberating, like I broke a cycle." "That's because you did," Robert said, "and every time you choose differently it gets easier. Not easy, just easier." A month passed. The foundation had helped 83 families. The company's stock, which had fallen during the scandal, started climbing again. But more importantly, the atmosphere inside the company was changing. People smiled more in the hallways. There were genuine conversations in the elevators. Fear was being replaced by something new: trust. On a Thursday afternoon, Victoria was in her office when she received an unexpected call. The number was unknown. She hesitated before answering. "Hello? Victoria." The voice was raspy, aged but unmistakable. Her heart stopped. "It's your father." She stood in silence, 1,000 emotions competing inside her: anger, hurt, longing, love. "Why are you calling?" "I saw the news about the foundation, about what you're doing." Julian Vance paused. "I'm proud of you, kiddo." The words she had waited her whole life to hear. And now, arriving at this moment, they broke something inside her. 14 years of anger began to crack. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that the little girl I raised, the one who believed in doing the right thing, she never died. She was just hiding. And I'm happy you found her again." The call ended shortly after. Victoria sat in silence, processing. She wasn't ready for total reconciliation. Maybe she never would be, but something had changed. The anger that consumed her was starting to give way to something different: understanding. She picked up the keychain with the silver wings, now always in her purse, looked out the window at the city stretching below. Somewhere out there, Robert was working at the school helping kids. Lisa was taking her son to therapy she could now afford. Dozens of other families were sleeping easier because the foundation existed. And Victoria realized something fundamental. Redemption wasn't a destination. It was a journey, and she was just getting started. 1 year after the video that changed everything, the Wings of Hope Foundation was celebrating its first anniversary. What began as an attempt at redemption had turned into something much bigger. 347 families had been supported. 23 kids earned full college scholarships. 52 employees had received free psychological treatment. 17 family crises had been resolved with emergency aid. The numbers were impressive, but they weren't what mattered most to Victoria. What mattered were the faces, the stories, the changed lives. Robert had proposed holding an event to celebrate the first year. Not something corporate and cold, but a real celebration. A day for people to gather, share stories, and honor their journeys. "We chose Central Park," he explained to Victoria as they planned. "An open, accessible space where everyone can feel welcome. No expensive ballrooms or extravagant decorations. Just people, food, music, and gratitude." Victoria agreed immediately. She had learned that the most meaningful things were often the simplest. The chosen Saturday dawned sunny. By 9 a.m., volunteers were already setting up tents, organizing chairs, firing up barbecue grills. Victoria arrived early, wearing jeans and a simple foundation t-shirt. She carried boxes of groceries, helped set up tables, chatted with everyone. A year ago, this would have been unthinkable. The billionaire CEO carrying boxes. Impossible. But now, it was natural. She had discovered that dignity wasn't in being above people, but in being among them. At 10 o'clock, people started arriving, current and former employees of Towers and Vance, families who had been helped by the foundation, teachers from the school where Robert worked, strangers who had heard about the event and wanted to see. Victoria saw Lisa arrive with her 3 children. Her youngest son, Johnny, was wearing a t-shirt with an astronaut drawing. He waved shyly at Victoria. She knelt to his height. "Hi, Johnny. You doing okay today?" The boy nodded and then, surprising everyone, hugged Victoria. It was a brief hug, but intense. When he pulled away, Victoria had tears in her eyes. "He never hugs strangers," Lisa said softly. "You're not a stranger to us anymore. You're family." The word echoed in Victoria's heart. Family. Something she had neglected for so long in pursuit of success, and now she was discovering it in unexpected places. Robert appeared with Bella. The girl, now 11, was radiant. She had grown so much in the last year, was more confident, happier. The stability of her dad's steady job, the school support, everything had contributed. "Aunt Victoria," Bella greeted her. The girl had started calling her that a few months ago, and Victoria never corrected her. She liked how it sounded. "My dad said you're going to speak today. I'm excited to listen." "Ah, I'll try not to be too boring," Victoria joked. "You're never boring," Bella replied with the brutal honesty of children. "You just used to be sad. Now you smile more." The simple observation hit Victoria deep. It was true. She smiled more, laughed more, felt more. She had spent so much time numb that she forgot what it was like to be truly alive. The event grew. By 11:30, over 400 people filled that area of the park. There was live music, a volunteer jazz band. Kids ran and played. Adults talked, ate, laughed. Anna Phillips found Victoria near the grills. "Did you see the news this morning?" Victoria shook her head. "No. What?" "We were voted one of the best companies to work for in New York. And you," Anna paused, a smile on her face, "were voted the CEO with the greatest growth in humanized leadership of the year." Victoria processed the information. A year ago, she had been the most hated CEO in the country. Now this. But curiously, she didn't feel the triumph she would have expected. She felt humility. "Thank you for telling me. And thank you for believing in me when no one else did." "I didn't believe," Anna admitted, "but you proved I was wrong, and I'm grateful for that." At 2 in the afternoon, the time for speeches arrived. Robert stepped onto a small makeshift platform. He wasn't a professional speaker, but his sincerity made up for any lack of technique. "A year ago, I was at the worst moment of my life," he began. "I had just lost another job. I was tired, bitter, almost giving up. And then something happened. Something that seemed like a catastrophe at the time, but turned out to be a blessing in disguise." He looked at Victoria, who was in the front row. "I confronted someone who needed to be confronted, and that person, instead of closing up defensively, had the courage to listen, the courage to change, and that change not only transformed her, but hundreds of lives." Robert pointed to the crowd. "Every person here has a story. Lisa, who can now give her son the treatment he deserves. Frank, who finally got that surgery he was putting off for years. Casey, who is getting her master's with the foundation scholarship. All these stories exist because one person had the courage to admit she was wrong." He paused. "Life breaks us, that is inevitable. But what we do with those broken pieces, that is our choice. We can let them destroy us. Or we can use the broken pieces to build something new, something better." "Victoria, want to come up here?" Victoria stepped onto the platform with her heart racing. She had prepared a speech, but when she looked at all those faces, the prepared words seemed inadequate, so she spoke from the heart. "My father taught me as a child that true leaders don't lead by fear but by example. But somewhere along the way I forgot that lesson. I built my success on intimidation and control. Thought power meant making people fear me." She looked at Robert, then at Bella, then at all the people there. "Until a brave man showed me I was wrong. He showed me that real strength isn't destroying people. It's lifting them up when they fall. It's choosing kindness when the world gives you 1,000 reasons to be cruel. It's continuing to believe in the good when everything seems lost." Victoria took a deep breath. "I don't deserve forgiveness for who I was. I know that. But I am grateful for the chance to be someone better. And I promise every day to choose to be that better person. Not for the reputation, not for the awards, but because I learned that the only thing that really matters in the end is how many lives you touched positively." She took the keychain with the silver wings out of her pocket. "This object was given to me as a reminder that we can always choose to fly differently. Choose to be different. And today, I want each of you to know, you have wings, too. You can fly. And if you fall, we will be here to help you get up again." The applause was deafening. But what Victoria remembered most afterwards wasn't the applause. It was Bella running to her and hugging her tight. It was Lisa wiping tears of gratitude. It was Frank shaking her hand and saying, "Thank you for giving me hope back." That evening, when the park was emptying, Victoria, Robert and Bella sat on the grass, looking at the stars starting to appear over the Manhattan skyline. "Dad, do you think broken people can be fixed?" Bella asked. "Suddenly." Robert looked at Victoria before answering. "I don't think we get fixed, honey. I think we get transformed, like those stars there. They're made of old stars that exploded, but look how they shine now." Bella thought about that. "So Victoria is like a new star?" Robert smiled. "We are all like new stars. Some of us just take longer to realize it." Victoria stood up and extended her hand to Bella. "Come, let's do something special." They walked to an open area of the park. Victoria had prepared a surprise, 150 paper lanterns, one for each family helped by the foundation. "Shall we release them together?" she asked. In the following minutes, one by one, the lanterns were lit and released into the sky. Each one carried a written wish: hope, renewal, gratitude, second chance, love, forgiveness. Victoria watched the lights rise, floating gently on the night breeze. Each light represented a touched life, a transformed story, and at the center of them all, her own transformation. She thought of her father, whom she had called the week before. The conversation was short, still full of unhealed wounds, but it was a start. She told him about the foundation, about what she had learned. He cried, she cried. There was no complete forgiveness in that moment, but there was recognition that both had been broken by life, and both were trying to rebuild themselves. Robert joined her, also watching the lanterns. "You okay?" "I am," Victoria replied, and it was true. "For the first time in years, I'm really okay." "What changed?" "Everything. Nothing." She laughed softly. "I changed. I learned that redemption isn't a moment. It's a daily choice. Waking up and deciding to be better. Choosing kindness even when anger would be easier. Choosing to build instead of destroy." Bella came running back, her face illuminated by the lantern light. "Aunt Victoria, I made a wish. Want to know what it is?" "Sure. I wished for you to be happy, truly happy, like you make other people happy." Victoria knelt and hugged the girl. "You know what? I already am. Thanks to you and your dad." That night, when all the lanterns had disappeared into the starry sky and people had left, Victoria stayed a little longer. She looked around the empty park, at the chairs still scattered, at the remains of food being collected by volunteers, at the echoes of laughter that still seemed to float in the air. A year ago, she was the Ice Queen. Now she was just Victoria, an imperfect woman with a past full of mistakes, but with a present dedicated to making a difference, and a future full of possibilities for continuous redemption. She took the keychain from her pocket and smiled. The silver wings shone under the lamppost light. Her phone rang. It was a message from Helen, her mother. Just a photo of her father, Julian, holding a newspaper with an article about the foundation. He was smiling. For the first time in years, he was smiling. Below the photo, a simple message: "He wants to see you." Victoria typed the reply. "Soon, I promise." It was true. She wasn't ready for complete forgiveness yet, but she was ready to start, because she had learned something fundamental. Forgiveness wasn't forgetting the pain. It was deciding that the pain would no longer dictate her future. She looked one more time at the sky, where the last lanterns were still visible as tiny luminous dots in the darkness. Each one represented a second chance, a story of pain transformed into hope. And she, Victoria Vance, was one of those stories, not the hero, not the villain, just a person learning day after day that true power lies not in how much you can destroy, but in how much you can build, in how many lives you can touch, in how many hearts you can heal, starting with your own. And with that thought, she walked toward her car, ready for the next chapter of her life. A life dedicated not to the pursuit of power, but to the pursuit of purpose, not to building empires, but to building hope. Because in the end, she had discovered it's not what you achieve that defines you, it's who you become in the process. And Victoria was finally becoming the person that 16-year-old girl standing next to her fighter pilot father dreamed of being. Someone who made people fly, not fall. End of story. If Victoria's journey of redemption and Robert's inspiring resilience touched your heart, know that we have more moving stories that explore the strength of forgiveness, second chances, and the transformative power of compassion. Each narrative is a window into the human soul and its infinite possibilities for new beginnings. If you believe in the power to change, in the value of acknowledging our mistakes, and in the beauty of lifting others up when they fall, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of these stories celebrating the best of humanity. Leave a like if this story inspired you to be a better version of yourself, and share in the comments which moment marked you the most. After all, we all have our invisible battles, and sometimes a story is all we need to remember that it is possible to start over. As many times as necessary, see you in the next story.